So Angus, Spirent's a test and measurement company, and I know from my long experience in the industry that you guys have to be there first. So what are you doing with NFV?
Sure, absolutely. So testing is our game, and we're very focused on the SDN and NFV space. So the first thing that we had to do was separate our software from our hardware. And I think you've probably heard that a few times today. But so we did that. We separated our testing applications, so our Spirent Test Center for router and switching, our Avalanche application for applications and security, and also our landslide application for mobile infrastructure testing. So we separated those three applications from the hardware that they actually run on, and we created this dedicated virtual platform based on Yocto embedded Linux and Intel DBTK. And so in terms of the hardware that we can now run our virtual platform and any of our testing applications on, we've partnered very closely with Intel, and we can support any Intel-based platform. So that ranges from the customer's Blade server to any kind of configuration that we want to do. So for example, we recently launched a 4-port 100 gig card that can do 10, 40, 100, but it still runs that same virtual platform and that same application. So we have a lot of flexibility there. So we've done the hard work on the platform side. Now we get into the interesting part of how do you actually deploy NFV? How do you make it work? And there's just so many variations and options that are involved. We've worked very closely with the industry bodies such as the Cloud Ethernet Forum, ETSI NFV, and also the ONF. In fact, Paul was recently announced as the vice chair for the Testing Leadership Council at the ONF. So at ETSI in particular, we've worked very closely with the different service providers in supporting the proof of concepts, and also more recently, we've actually submitted some of our methodologies on various NFV scenarios. So VM to VM migration, also scalability testing, and ensuring ultimately that the predictability in this virtualization environment with shared resources is there to ensure that application quality of experience.
There's a lot to test, whatever it is, and something so new as this with so many more moving parts.
Yeah, we consider it a very exciting time. We're excited to be part of this transformation and aggressively going after this space and trying to help with the accelerated adoption of some of these technologies. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Good.
So one of the biggest concerns about moving to the cloud and of using NFV is security. So what about NFVS?
Well, NFVS is definitely interesting, right? So in the previous session, all the security guys mentioned that security is always a layered approach, right? You don't have one thick layer. The approach generally, you have to address security at multiple layers, right? So if you look at a virtualized data center environment, for example, right, there's the compute layer. Well, actually, on top of the compute, you have the application layer, right? Then you have the compute, and now storage, right? And down in the network, you have all this network virtualization stuff that are going on, right? So on one hand, we see this needs, right, of this layer approach for security, right, across all these layers. On the other hand, with all this new SDN, NFV stuff that are going on, is essentially about two things, right? One is all these functions like storage and network and overlay, underlay, and compute. Everything's being virtualized, right? And everything is also now programmable, right? That's the whole thing about software-defined X, right? So now there's really this capability, right, in theory, that if we have control functions, right, and if everything can be orchestrated, can be programmable from the underlay to the overlay, right, to even the storage and compute all the way up to the application, then isn't that a great opportunity for us to, exercise and orchestrate all these control plane functions, right? And we can actually make the whole stack looks like a big policy enforcement engine to do this, to really implement this layer security approach, right, from an end-to-end perspective. So I think that's actually a very exciting times in terms of how all this, everything programmable, everything orchestrated. I think essentially security, right, a multi-layer security architecture can essentially be orchestrated, right? So I think the opportunities are there. We're starting to see customers and service providers asking for that. And I think we are starting to see vendors moving toward that. So it's kind of an exciting time. Right?
It is, and that's a big problem, and security is in every layer, needs to be in every layer.
That's
And
right.
now we've abstracted the software from the hardware, and it makes it more complicated. So you guys have to be there first.
Yes, and like you said, there are lots of moving parts, right? So the good thing is, over the years we have made a pretty good name for ourselves in terms of doing things like security testing, security fuzzing, firewall benchmarking, and we also do a lot of measurement, not just at like from a network traffic point of view. We actually, like for example, we can, on one port, right, 110, 40 gig port, we can simulate a whole city of users. And you can pick and choose from like 1,000 pre-canned application profiles. So you can say, I want to simulate 20,000 user sessions that are doing, Facebook-like kind of traffic, right? And I can have 50,000 people, downloading YouTube video, right? So we can actually use realistic application profiles to measure what we call end user or application level quality of experience, right? And what we're finding is that measurement is actually a lot more meaningful when it comes to NFV, right? Because what we're measuring is not just how many packets a virtual firewall can process, can push through, right? What we're actually measuring is what matters to the user, right? How long does it take for me to load a web page, right? And if using this firewall versus that firewall, right? And if I have a DDoS attack, how much is it impacting my response time in terms of me using Salesforce.com, for example. Right?
Those are really good down-to-earth examples of what needs to be tested.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.